Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series There Is No Epic Lucha, Only Puns. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy Chapter 189, The Demon Diva. What sort of teacher has torture devices as a wagon? Estelle puffed as the wagon cheerfully made its way through the town with all the students aboard it, and Estelle at the front holding a spoon and ladle that glowed, absorbing her mana to power its momentum. It's not a torture device. It's legal in more towns than it is not. So by debatable means, it is a learning tool, Mr. Jones said brightly. Why do I have to wear this frumpy outfit? Estelle whined as the grey and white apron settled over the thick blouse, billowing in the passing breeze. It enables the wagon to absorb your mana better, as does the instrument in hand. The hat is just to complete the look, however, Mr. Jones admitted, as they left the town, having to slow down to let a confused but excited girl in a dress pass by, and the girl made Mr. Jones' nose itch, like smelling something familiar but not entirely pleasant. It was an interesting slime she carried. Mr. Jones hadn't seen that particular kind before. The woman, well, the thing that was pretending to be a woman was also interesting. Still, he had his lesson planned, and by hell, he was sticking with it. I can't go back into the dungeon. My punishment will get extended, Estelle said, and Mr. Jones waved her off, but stiffened as they passed a sleepy-looking inn where an old wrinkled hag was waving goodbye to a serious-looking boy. The two shared a look, and Mr. Jones' heckles went up, and the old woman's nostrils flared. Boil your head in cow urine, and then may you use your heart as a sausage-filling, horrible saggy sausage, Goo cursed, and a tongue so old that it was collecting benefits from the gods. I hope your customers rate you as unsatisfying 3 stars out of 5 every day, Mr. Jones yelled back in a language not yet spoken in this world. At least they chose to come here. Those innocent brats have no choice but to go to your hell house. Goo yelled back louder and slammed the door. Saucy old hag. It was weird to see her so alive again after the grey had been so persistent over the years. Weird, but annoying. Oh, the teacher has a crush, Dio said, and Mr. Jones gave him a look of such utter revulsion that a nearby bird fell to the ground dead. He sure does. That is pure love, Estelle said between sweaty huffs. Mr. Jones scooted away from her in horror as the students all began to giggle. The lunch lady is ready to serve, Estelle warned as she pushed the wagon over the hill. Before Mr. Jones could get too far, someone stopped the wagon and Mr. Jones smelled the scent of success. He turned with a smile to see Rudy glaring at him. You're outside the school. This alarms me, she said to him, and then blinked as she spotted Estelle, pale and sweaty in a large uniform. What are you doing here? I thought you called children ugly womb gremlins that were illegal to set on fire, she asked with a raised brow. The moody one bribed me with cake, Estelle grunted, and Grim shot her a shushing noise, as if to keep his bribing secrets private. We're on a field trip to Delta's dungeon as she requires the aid of a demon, and she called upon me, Mr. Jones said with a smile, and then blinked as Rudy seemed to glare at him, her foot digging into the wagon and causing it to groan. And why does she need you when I'm here? She asked curiously. Perhaps she needs history lessons. Do you have complete historical knowledge of the world? Perhaps she needs help with a math puzzle. Do you enjoy puzzles? Mr. Jones pressed, used to Rudy's temper, as he had taught since she was a young child himself. Rudy grumbled and pulled her foot away. I can research stuff and any puzzle can be beaten if you can just beat it hard enough, she argued. Rudy, join us! Dio patted the wagon. Kid, there isn't enough room for a spare set of my shoes, let alone, Estelle turned and blinked as the wagon now seemed to be much longer than before and had more ornate details on the wood. My class has exactly enough room as needed for my students, Mr. Jones said firmly. I graduated, Rudy protested, but climbed inside and sat next to Dio, who handed her a juice box. Rudy took it without complaining. You'll always be my student, Rudy, Mr. Jones said softly, and the woman actually looked troubled by the fact and not at all touched. Students, you chain them to a reality layer once or twice to force them to graduate, and they take it personally. But really, if Rudy hadn't somehow vanished into a pocket dimension for 3 months and become untraceable, Mr. Jones wouldn't have eaten 3 desks, 2 bicycles, and a whole novel about ducks using robots to fight evil. It had been a binge he wasn't proud of. However, since then, he had to teach Dio and Grim. His patience had vastly improved. He only ate a desk or 2 every so often. I'm very busy. Oh, busy mayor things, the crazy old woman in a grey bathroom cried from the window, peeking out behind the curtains with wide eyes. Surma stared, feeling like she was intentionally being ignored. "May Darknessbane please open up and welcome the Crown Princess Surma," Lawson said with a loud thumps on the door. "I would rather not have so much paperwork about the repairs of the main road," the woman said, and then went quiet. "Who the hell thinks this is worth my time? Who do they expect me to find to fix the road? This is why I use these as kindling," the woman roared, and the desk smashed through a nearby window with a dozen important documents floating away in the wind as if to let out cries of mercy. Surma was almost sure that she could hear the paperwork cry freedom as they vanished into the distance. "Larsa, this woman seems unstable. Should we leave?" she asked, and the guard captain gave her a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mayor Darknessbane is a respectable woman. She just doesn't like responsibility, or people, or official business, or people, or unexpected guests, or people," Larsa explained. "We're people," Mass said as he took a turn holding Mule. "Excuse me?" Imps asked, looking insulted at the idea of being a people. He shooed a dozen butterflies trying to land on him, and Surma tried not to feel envious that butterflies didn't land on her. Was it her perfume? A second later, Mule sat on her head and formed a little gooey appendages with a small poi. It made Surma feel better, but it seemed the local wildlife took 3 steps back from her. Even insects were avoiding her now. The door suddenly opened, and the crazy old woman wearing nothing but fluffy boots and a robe emerged wielding a spatula like a knife. "What is that?" She sniffed a dozen times before coming near Surma. The girl stiffened as those intense yellow eyes locked onto hers. "Larsa, you didn't tell me the princess was such a—" Darknessbane took another steep whiff of enjoying the scent. "Prolific monster," she almost growled with a grin. Surma was a what? "Well, she isn't," Larsa tried to say, but Surma was suddenly whisked inside by the crazy old woman. "What's your tool? Fish knife, great axe. Oh, I love a good double-ended blade and an army of mowdown. It's always nice to meet a fellow hobbyist in population control." The mayor beamed as she seemed to pour Surma a massive glass of putrid whiskey. Did you just confess to being a serial killer?" Surma asked as the others followed them in. "Psh, no," the woman said with a snort. "Oh, good. That wasn't as bad as Surma thought." "I don't have patterns or preferences, just that they're tough to kill," the mayor went on. "Poi," Mule said with a hum as if singing. "Mila, this is the king's daughter," Larsa said with a strange tone, and Surma tried not to grimace at the connection to that man. "So many kings really, and they all suck," the mayor said, and Larsa sat down and slammed a wine bottle down with such force that it made a clear ringing noise. "Look at her," Larsa seemed to almost order, and Surma felt oddly exposed as Mayor Darknessbane looked at her fully for once, taking her all in. "You see it. I think she has his confused nose," Larsa said, and Mila's voice had gone from cranky to moody to just flat instantly. Surma felt in danger, like she was sitting across from a wolf. "Welcome to Durance. Now do what you came to do and go," the mayor said, and there was a tense silence. "My father is I get why you don't like me because of him. He's vain and cruel and hurts everyone around him." Surma stood up, holding Mule like a pillow to ease the tightness in her chest. "Kid, shut up. Your father was an idiot and he was cruel because he did things without thinking of others. He hurt everyone he ever met and I'll never forgive him for that." The mayor stood up as well and turned as if needing to take a deep breath. "Well, whatever. You can sit here and be a sad drunk or whatever, but I'm going to do my duty to complete the local dungeon and earn my throne. If you want to feel sorry for yourself and sit in the dark like a crazy cat person, then you can just, do that thing I just said," Surma said hotly while glaring at Mila's back. "Yeah, Surma's a good person, because even though she's a princess, she ended up helping me out and letting me fulfill my dreams. I bet you never had a nice prince or princess ever just help you out, so maybe you don't understand," Mass said, and Surma shot him a warm smile. "Ugh, they're making me want to hurl." Mila grunted and reached around for a pen and a stamp. She moved fast, scribbling on Surma's head what felt like a signature and stamping Mass's head with an official stamp that looked to be a sword, a fang, and a claw buried into a hunk of cheese. "I have a condition before you go in. Find the one called Alpha and the one close to the anxiety attack. Gentle or fair play. Get advice from them before going in. I'll pay for your in-rooms," Mila said. Surma smiled and was about to say something when she spotted the imp demon pressed against the wall, looking so pale he might faint. "King Taker," he kept whispering over and over. Mila gave him a long look, then dismissed his existence so entirely, Surma had to convince herself to remember the imp was real. "What's a king taker?" Mass asked as they left the house with Mila watching them go. The precursor to a kingmaker, Lawson said with a snort. Soma couldn't see anyone with any sanity wanting to spend a night with that weirdo woman. Mila watched the group go, feeling the urge to drink until she woke up with a hangover under the kitchen sink again. Damn Gil was his clone. A little more fire to her, but that would be her mother, wouldn't it be? Oh, duh. You would have been wrapped around her finger, Mila said and shut the door, trying to keep out the guilt that wanted in. A voice at the back of her mind kept whispering, You had a chance to be the same, godmother. A nasty voice of her own making said. What had Duran said? Right, so it started. Mila, you can be a godmother of the first one to find you. That's your rule? Yep, that was what she had promised. Mila needed to stop drinking or getting attached to people. Mila eyed the whiskey in her hands, then snorted. People it is, she said, and went inside. Delta was being invaded by dozens of children, 2 demonic presences, and worst of all, Estelle, who knew a letter could be so effective. Rudy looked as good as ever, and Delta was pleased to see some of the stress on her face had eased off. The man next to her. Delta felt odd, and as she peered at him, and he back at her, she spotted pen ink in his fingers, tiny paper cuts and coffee stains on his tie, while he seemed on the verge of setting fire to the world or getting back to the kids he was in charge of. A teacher, they both said at the same time in surprise. Yeah, you learn a lot about how to hate pigs, hot springs, yappy trees, the little mushroom people here, the stall said briskly. Parent meetings, but the child didn't tell them about homework, the demon said. After-school clubs they didn't agree to, but can't quite turn down, Delta responded quickly. Punishing eating in class but having chocolate in your drawer. The man was heaving in excitement. Just giving everyone a pass on a test that doesn't matter because you're tired, Delta yelled. Teacher, they both screamed. You can skin 3 rabbits in a minute if you use a knife long ways instead of upwards, Rudy interjected with a smile. It struggled to last as both of them stared at her. I once counted an entire skeleton to make sure a skeleton ghost couldn't escape. Patience, master, Rudy continued to say. Skeleton ghost, Delta blinked. A spirit that haunts bones. Once it chooses a skeleton, if even one bone escapes, it can rebuild itself out of the other parts. Mr. Jones explained, and Delta looked impressed, but Rudy looked oddly moody. Taking the kids to the lake room, she sat the 2 down as everyone went for a swim in the high noon setting. Occasionally, the moonfish darted past, causing squeals of delight. Waddles was also present, but he didn't let any of the kids come close to his knife throne. Delta wanted to say that he was being nice, but likely he just didn't want child blood on his blades. Mr. Jones looked troubled. Opening an actual gate to the abyss is no simple matter. It requires a lot, and I don't even know if some of the demons in this world are still around or not. The duck is unhelpful, he admitted, making Delta's help swore. The need to recover a student is important, so I won't give up trying to think of a way to help. As a fellow educator, I value your commitment to your students, Mr. Jones said, and Delta giggled and waved him off. What a swell guy. Hey kid, Rudy muttered, and she seemed to be putting whatever was bugging her to the side and give it a serious thought. So you would be eternally grateful if someone was to rescue this little doe of a girl? Rudy asked, and Delta nodded. Indebted, Delta said seriously. Betty, I will suffer to see her safely returned. To know that she's in the abyss and can't get out is something that is hurting me, and I won't rest until she's out, Delta said firmly. Mr. Jones smiled slowly. Okay, first, don't say you'll do anything in front of a demon again. It sends the morally wrong message, Rudy said quickly. Delta winced, but Mr. Jones just winked at her, and Delta had to stifle another grin. Second, you could have just asked me. I have a legit door to hell cooked into me, Rudy said with a sigh. Delta stared at her. You do? I thought Mr. Jones here said that it was really hard to open a door, Delta asked, confused, and the other demon just giving Rudy a bewildered look of borderline close on horror. Not hard, just annoying, Rudy admitted, and rolled her neck. Rudy, a proper door requires procedure and proper respect given to both the Demon King and the brother for the bridge to be, Mr. Jones began, and Rudy ignored him. You old goat, I need to speak to you now, Rudy boomed with a voice that was deeper and coarse as hot coals rubbing together. Her voice ripped into a space before her, pushing Delta's manner aside with ease. In the gap where the manor parted, a flash of red fire mingled with shadows before the door formed out of red gold and dark jewels. There was a painting of a near-naked woman wearing a wolf pelt, and little else holding a knife to a shadowy figure's throat, and looking both attractive and dangerous at the same time. Ugh, I told him to change that, Rudy moaned. The doors parted to reveal a monstrous being of colossal size and pressing power that made Delta want to break into a mad gibberish speeches of random factoids. Dad! Rudy hissed, and the monstrous being shifted until a well-dressed man in a suit and tie stood before Rudy with impressively dark hair and brown eyes so dark they tinged them black. Other than a strange feeling of inhumanness, Delta only felt a slight. Delta's cheeks tinged hot pink, and she mentally began to recite the name of trees. This was Rudy's father, who was a super demon. "Oh, King of the Abyss, I bow," Mr. Jones said, and Delta nearly screamed in panic. No one told her that she had royalty coming. What was the protocol? "Farah, tea and crumpets," she hissed through the walls. "Hello, love. You're looking more blood-soaked and beautiful every decade I see you," the man said and looked around the lake room with a slight curious smile. Waddles had lowered his dark head in the direction of the man as well. The man turned, seeing a dozen children splashing in the lake. "Oh, look, offspring by the dozens. I didn't know they reproduced like frogs these days," the man said with a clap of his hands. "Dad, I need help," Rudy said, but her voice was thick like she was swallowing a lemon. The man blinked, then looked on the verge of tears. It was tragically beautiful, and Delta wanted to paint a picture of the demon every time his face changed. "Say the word, my little dagger. The kingdom shall be ash, their children orphans, their dogs free, and their stock markets crashed," he said with a sweet tone, and took Rudy's hands, who looked entirely done with the man already. "Dad, what have you got against soup stock?" Rudy muttered, and the man huffed. "It's a sign of an inferior chef. A true chef needs only the bones of thine enemies," the king of hell said. Wait, if he was the king and Rudy was a kid, Delta's mind was exploding. "Dad, this is my very special friend, Delta," Rudy said, and the handsome man turned to her and blinked. "Oh, I will never forget a form like yours. I must have been nearly 10 or 12 years old. You look much more delectable in manner form." The king smiled and went to kiss Delta's hand, his own power making her avatar solid and firm. "We've met?" Delta managed to ask around the urge to make a cavewoman noises. "You were unconscious, so sadly we couldn't meet as fate would have intended. You were a soul orb. It wouldn't have been right," the Demon King said with a sigh. "Dad, let go of her hand," Rudy said stiffly, and the man laughed and obeyed. Delta felt as though she had been denied some inner treasure as his warmth faded. That was so not like her. What the heck? She hid behind Rudy, who seemed to grow more pleased with her father raised a brow. "Is he an incubus?" Delta whispered. "He's the demonic avatar of lust, battle, love, treasures, and dreams. Pops can make people crave things so badly they'd bend a knee to him. He's also the strongest demon in 1 versus 1, Rudy explained. "What do you desire?" the king asked sweetly, and Delta used Rudy as an anti-seduction shield in a panic. "Hey, child," Rudy said, and the Demon King stood up. "Not possible. I can never truly allow myself to ever give myself to another as I did your mother, and I gave myself to her a lot," he said, and he visibly sighed like a lovesick teenager. Rudy closed her eyes and seemed to be regretting this meeting by the second, but she powered on. And we want one that's already in the abyss. A kid that's near the Duck of Wrath place," Rudy said quickly. "Only if you agree to pass a message on to your mother for me," the king said, and Rudy hesitated and nodded. "Her eyes are like exploding stars, her smile like fangs of marrow-sucking worm, her shapely body like a—" He began to recite, and Delta was enraptured by the sheer passion. "Write it down, you weirdo," Rudy ordered, and the man actually meekly turned to pull out a quill and parchment. The man actually slipped into a blood-soaked envelope and put a kiss on it to seal it. "That much magic could turn a normal human into an upper-class demon," Mr. Jones muttered as the letter glowed. "But it's like a passionate letter from long-distant lovers of 2 nations. We have to respect it," Delta said quickly, and thought of the many books the Demon King coming to seduce normal single woman with 3 cats. It was coming true. "Give me a week to get her. I'll need to get a loaf of bread for the Duke and his ducklings. It has to be the good stuff, and for that I'll need to trade with the governor of greed," he sighed. "But Betty might not last a week," Delta said in a panic, and he brushed a thumb across her chin and smiled. Delta was upset because of, Beetlejuice or something? No, wait, Betty. "Back, you devious man of unholy unclean thoughts," she warned, and the man bowed as if it were a compliment. I'm telling Mum you're flirting with my friend who's like a teenager to you. I bet that'll impress her, Rudy said, and the king looked pained. I must go. I left the souls of the evil on slow burn, he said quickly, kissing Rudy on the head and vanishing through the door where it vanished, with no hint that it had ever been there. Dalta just felt worried about Betty. The girl was all alone. Feed me points, evolve me, fight me, give me a hug, Beta screamed as she hugged a flailing tentacle monster that crushed it, absorbing its essence into her as a near-endless horde of mindless beasts charged her. This was amazing. In the midst of the 100 monsters, she spotted a rotted tree monster, and her world went red. Tree! End of chapter.